Hello, and welcome to another episode of Workplace Wizards. This is a podcast to help HR improve their workplace environments. And as you can see, this is our 30th episode. And on October 30th, it's my birthday. So my wife made me put a balloon up on my chair to celebrate this thing. But talk about celebrations. This past weekend, Gavin, I actually had the opportunity to go home back to Heath, Ohio, where I grew up, went to high school, because we had a celebration of life for one of our coaches, Coach Hardin. And the thing about this is we had two losses this year of major people in Heath, Ohio. One of them was Coach Hardin, and the other one was Coach Klontz. These two coaches were a severe impact on my whole life. As a matter of fact, there's so many lessons that I've learned from them, and that's why this is entitled "Lessons from Legends," because these two guys were complete legends. So before we even get started, I do want to have my condolences to Adam Klontz and then Heather and Don Hardin. We are sorry for the loss of you guys' fathers, but they were great men, and they've done so much for all of us. So during that present celebration of life, there was several speakers there, and one of the main themes they talked about was authenticity, Gavin. They talked about authenticity, and they told some stories, and I can relate to these stories because I ran cross country for Coach Hardin, and one of the stories they talked about was how when you're running up the hill, he would have you come up, he'd drive his truck and beside you, and you're going up these big hills, and they called it the Blueberry Hills. And he'd say, "Hey, put your hand on that mirror." And, you put your hand on that mirror, and then he'd put his hand on top of you, and he'd speed up the truck. He'd make you run faster. He goes, "Now, this is the pace I want you running these hills." And those things stuck with me, Gavin. Whenever I dealt with, that was like a life lessons for me. And whenever I dealt with adversity, whenever I had a tough hill to climb, I went after it hard. I increased my speed, and I went after it a little bit harder than what I would if I was just normally running. And so that was some of the life lessons that I learned. There's so many stories. One of the people talked about how at a cross country meet, and this happened to us, we were at a cross country meet, and we won the cross country meet. And matter of fact, we finished in first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. So we had the top 6 places in the cross country meet. So after the cross country meet was over, our coach would talk to us and have a thing, and he went and walked and got in his truck, started up, and he'd take off, and he leaned out the window and he goes, "You guys go ahead and run home. Don't be late for supper." We're like, "What?" And we had to race a race in a cross country meet at a different location in a different city, and then we had to run home from that city. So that was probably about 5 or 6 mile run on top of the race that we had to run, which was 3.5 miles, 3.1 miles. So those are some of the stories that we had, Gavin. But, you talk about quotes that people say. And I remember there's this famous quote that people always say, there is no I in team. And that relates to some people. Some people can relate to that quote. But then Michael Jordan, when he was told that quote, he responded, "But there is an I in win."
Mm-hmm.
Some people can relate to that story as well. And I think I related to that there is an I in win. And it was because of Coach Hardin and Coach Klontz that had us doing the most that we could do to try to better ourselves. Another quick story about this celebration of life. So I'm sitting there, Gavin, with one of my best friends, and you know him, Rick Brown. He was my best friend in high school. We competed against everything. Matter of fact, there was competition after competition after competition. We kept pushing each other to be better. And then we went to college together, and we played sports. But I'm sitting there, and during the during the celebration, one of the speakers said, "Hey, if you ran cross country for Coach Hardin, please stand." So as I'm standing, he mumbles, "Oh, running cross country is for wimps." And so I looked down at him and I smiled and I just laughed, and I'm laughing inside, and I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, you wasn't even tough enough to run cross country for our team. So those are some of the things that happened, Gavin, with our team.
So, I mean, that's amazing, and you talk about it with great fun. I mean, I didn't even. This is the first time I've spoken in 5 minutes, man. So it just shows how what an impact these people had on your life. But actually, your coaches sound quite tough. So, what was it about them that still makes you think so fondly of them? What was it about them? Because their standards were pretty high, really, if you think about
Oh,
it.
well, and like the speakers would say, there, like I said, there were several speakers, and each of them talked about their authenticity, right? And they were the same men when we were in high school, which was 39 years ago, 40 years ago when I was playing sports for these guys, as it was when they retired from coaching. It was the same thing. It was that grit, it was that toughness and the mental toughness to help you, keep moving on. Um, and Gavin, it's hard to explain that, you know, those lessons that you learned, you still use them to today.
Mm,
So when you're talking to people and they're having tough times, you know how to, hey, let's dig in and go a little bit harder. Let's help you get through this and move on.
Because there's what you talk about there of your coaches. There's an element of consistency there, but also reliability. So
Oh
although they,
yes, like we talked about that.
yeah,
Trust
and
and
then
reliability. Yep.
and you trusted them because they're reliable, they're consistent in their approach. Yeah, they were tough on you, but you knew why they were doing it, and it's in order to get better. And I guess
Right.
how do you? I guess the challenge for me in our world now is how do you take that spirit, I guess, or those how they treated you for the people that you're coaching and training now? Because what are the lessons you want them to learn from that?
Well, basically it's the human behavior styles. So what you found out, and these coaches would tell you, it's not every single person can be coached the same way.
Mm,
And they read into our human behavior styles. They knew what it took to push people to their limits, to push people, because he couldn't just do that with every single student. He did it with the ones that wanted to be pushed a little bit harder. But then the other ones he had to take by the hand and like help pull them along and teach them in different ways. And then, like I said, they both were very tough coaches. So you wasn't going to be sports wasn't for everybody.
mm,
Sports wasn't for everybody, and there's lessons that can be learned by those individuals who didn't even play sports. And
mm,
and I now I go to segue into another thing that happened today. Today I opened up my Facebook and looked at a direct message from a friend of mine who in high school. Now we graduated from high school together, and I probably if I have seen her maybe once or maybe even twice in the last 39 years since we graduated from high school. Now I'm dating myself. I'm almost as old as you, Gavin. Uh, so I'm dating myself here.
Older, that's all we need to know.
But anyways, I received a message from and her name was Paula, and she sent me this message, and I read the message, and she talked about how I did something in high school that I don't even remember doing, Gavin. I don't even remember doing. But she says that I came to see her when she wasn't feeling the greatest, and I said hello, and the way she spoke, I noticed that there was something wrong, and I stayed there with her, and we talked, and I said, "Are you sure you're all right?" She said, "Yeah, I'm good," and we talked it out, and then I waited. And her father picked her up, and she left, and then I left, and then she tells me how 39 years later, that little bit of just being there, that emotional intelligence of recognizing something was wrong and being there for her meant so much to her that she wrote me today. And I'm talking about she wrote me a very long direct message and she talked about that. Well, my response was basically, you know, I didn't even know that I did that for you. I didn't even know that I was being polite and changing, who I am and to be there for you at that moment. I didn't even recognize it. However, that's the same way it is in workplace environments. You'll find that there's somebody that's going through something. And if you just took the time just to say hello and greet them and ask them, hey, are you okay? Is everything good? That could mean so much to somebody in the workplace environment. And
Oh, Listen, I mean, it says a lot about you, but there's a couple of things there. I know one is that you're driven very much by values, and just being kind to somebody is quite important. But what that for me in kind of the work we do now is about leaders in particular need to understand the impact they can have on people that they lead.
Oh,
and
yes.
The legacy that they leave could be not just next week, a month or 2 years. It could be in a number of years' time. So let me just change this. The impact they've had. Sorry about that. The impact they've had on someone's life is just so strong that you might not even think about it, but that thing you did for that person today to support them when they're in a difficult position, that can affect them for their whole career.
Right. Yeah. But you know how that, how I see that play into, my life and small world solutions basically is 99% of the times in my life, all I wanted to be was a friend. 99% of the time, that's all I wanted to be as a friend and to help anywhere I could. And I took that same transition into being a government special agent. I still just wanted to help. How can I help? And then when I retired from, the government, and I put my gun and badge down and I started Small World Solutions, it continued. How can I help? And that's why today, I wake up every day inspired. I wake up every day inspired to find so many different ways of how I can inspire someone to inspire someone else. And Gavin,
but it's more, I mean, that's amazing. And that says a lot about you. But what I find that a lot of people don't realize how much power they have. And I don't mean power in a negative way, but they just don't realize how influential they are on other people. Okay. And if they maybe understand that a little bit, they might just treat people, be a little bit kinder, maybe support people, or when they're going through a difficult patch, just support them through those difficulties. And the impact they have, and consequently, the impact that has on performance for organizations, just by people understanding that they're going to have a big influence on the people that they manage, is so massive. But people just don't think about it. And I think what you're demonstrating is that actually what we go back to, just core values of being kind, being authentic, being fair, honest, all those sort of things, being trustworthy, all those things are so important in terms of how we are driven to deal with the people that we lead and manage. It's so important because the outcome is, as you say, it could last for years.
Thanks, Gavin, for that. And like I said, we try to keep our podcast short, so we're going to go ahead and end this podcast with the sound of, we want to make sure that people understand everybody has different human behavior styles. So no one's going to act exactly like you. No one's going to look at situations exactly like you, or no one's going to perform to their best with the same words of inspiration. People need different ways of being inspired. And it takes that emotional intelligence to recognize that and be able to read the person and find out, hey, this is what this person needs. Or you can find out that, hey, what you're giving this person is not what they need, and be able to recognize and be aware, self-aware of how you're influencing or impacting other people. So with that being said, I do want to say, I want to end this podcast just saying it was a celebration of life for both Dave Klontz and Coach Don Hardin. And we do severely miss both of them and the lessons we've learned, the life lessons we learned from two legends. And that's why I want to end my podcast. This is Small World Solutions, and me and Gavin are saying bye for now.
Bye for now.